On July the 18th of 2023, Missouri man Zachariah Peterson called a Ford assembly plant in Kansas City, threatening that he was armed with an AK-47 and had C4 explosives strapped to his chest. He claimed that he was a disgruntled employee who'd barricaded himself in a second-floor bathroom. Law enforcement rushed to the scene in force, with at least 100 officers being mobilized to the location, as reported by the Kansas City Star. The police assessed the situation over a period of several hours and more than 2,000 employees were evacuated. Investigators would ultimately learn that 19-year-old Peterson's call was a hoax. He'd reportedly learned about C4 explosives from playing Call of Duty and had made the call so that his friends could skip work. Clay County prosecuting attorney Zachary Thompson told the media, "It's unfortunate that one person was able to do so much damage in one case. Peterson's actions placed a strain on the police force as officers were unable to attend other emergencies in the community. The authorities reported that the call also took an emotional toll on the evacuated employees and that it slowed down production at the plant. Peterson was consequently arrested for making extremist threats." Number 10. Unnamed driver in Nebraska. In March of 2023, a driver called the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Nebraska to report that he'd been nearly run off the road by someone driving a truck on the wrong side of Highway 77. He gave the authorities clear indications of where the near collision had taken place, and they consequently tracked him down. Official footage of the deputies approaching the man's car was later shared online. Upon being interviewed by the police, the driver immediately realized what he'd done. When asked if he knew why he'd been pulled over, the man stated, "Yeah, because I was on the wrong side of the road." It would turn out that the man, whose blood alcohol content was twice the legal limit, had called 911 on himself. He told the officer that he thought someone else was driving on the oncoming lane, and when the cop asked, "But it turned out it was you," the man replied, "Yep." The drunk driver was consequently arrested and placed in the back of the police car. Number 9. Johnny Yates. In the fall of 2023, Florida man Johnny Yates was wanted by law enforcement in Polk County on charges of tampering, false imprisonment, and aggravated battery. In mid-October, the sheriff's office received a tip that Yates was holed up inside his Lakeland home. The department described the events that followed in a subsequent Facebook post. Upon arriving at the address, officers spotted a note on a dry erase board that had been placed in front of a window. The note read, "Johnny Yates does not live here." The authorities considered that it was a shockingly uninspired attempt by Yates to throw them off his trail. The Facebook post jokingly peered into the officer's mindset at the time by stating, "Gee, a dry erase board never lied to us before. Should we believe it?" The officers questioned the person who was leaving the house, and they confirmed that the wanted man was, in fact, inside. The police surrounded the property and called Yates out for about an hour before dispensing what the post described as surrender smoke. 4 people emerged from the building, all of whom were charged with resisting arrest, but Yates wasn't among them. The police discharged a second round of smoke, and when that didn't work, they released a canine unit. Yates was arrested and taken to the local jail after the dog found him hiding in a modified chest of drawers. Number 8. Ukrainian teenager. An unnamed Ukrainian teenager was arrested for animal cruelty in the spring of 2020 for a sickening video-recorded prank that involved her giving her puppy vodka to drink. The clip was captured in the western village of Marmonitsia. The 18-year-old poured the alcohol into a bowl and gave it to her cream-colored dog, saying, "Here is some vodka for my beloved pet. Now we are going to find out how it will affect him." Moments after lapping up the alcohol, the puppy ran away and began shaking uncontrollably. The teen was heard laughing as the dog was convulsing. It would later emerge that it hadn't suffered any long-term damage. The teen was tracked down by law enforcement after posting the video and quickly apologized for her actions, claiming that she and her friends had been doing various challenges and that hers was to get her dog drunk. She reportedly faced a fine of around $300. Number 7. Amanda Trumi. On the afternoon of August 17th of 2014, police in Woodbridge, Virginia, were called to the 13400 block of Longwood Manor Court to investigate a reported robbery. The caller, 19-year-old Amanda Trumi, told officers that she'd met Jackson Chrysler in the area in order to buy marijuana from him. The teenager claimed that 20-year-old Chrysler had brandished a pistol during the meetup and robbed her of an undisclosed amount of money before fleeing. An investigation would reveal that Trumi had never been robbed and that she'd willingly given the money to Chrysler so that he could buy the drugs from another party when he failed to deliver the marijuana. Trumi called the police on him but didn't think things through, as she also ended up being arrested. She was charged with attempted possession of marijuana and filing a false police report, while Chrysler was arrested for attempted possession with intent to distribute marijuana. Number 6. Darren Stinson. Philadelphia man Darren Stinson, aged 21, was arrested in February of 2014 for aggravated assault and robbery. After he had pulled a series of ill-advised pranks, Stinson and an accomplice recorded themselves scaring people with pellet guns that resembled genuine firearms and posted the content to their social media. In one clip of the disturbing series, they threatened a man who had a small child with him, and in another video, a woman was threatened for her phone number. A man shoveling salt in the road was held at gunpoint in order to put the salt in the back of Stinson's car, as he and his accomplice screamed profanities at him. Stinson commented on one of his videos to say all of this is jokes, adding, "I'm not out here really robbing people. I'm not out here really shooting people." The man also wrote that he could actually be committing crimes, but that he was trying to leave that life behind. Other prank clips uploaded to his Instagram account, called Funniest in Philly, included instances of racism, sexism, and him tricking people into thinking he was hurt, only to then scream at them when they tried to help. Many commenters condemned Stinson's content and were unamused by the clips. Stinson's father, Rodney, was one of his most vocal critics, and he told a media outlet, "Nothing with the gun is funny, nothing. I don't consider it funny." As of subsequent updates on the matter, Stinson was held on a $125,000 bail by Philadelphia Police's Central Detective Division. Number 5. Wayne Parker. Wayne Parker, a farmer from Suffolk, England, was found guilty of fraudulent trading in October of 2022. The man, who was at the time in his mid-30s, had obtained credit from multiple suppliers by claiming his sheep and cattle business was more successful than it actually was. He would end up owing the equivalent of nearly $1 million to his suppliers and made virtually no attempts to pay his mounting bills. Parker directed most of the funds towards his failing farming business, but also made a few lavish purchases, including a Range Rover. The man was additionally accused of failing to remove farmed animal remains properly, not keeping adequate records of his cattle, and moving large quantities of them without respecting the proper process. After being found guilty of fraudulent trading and pleading guilty to the animal offenses, Parker failed to show up for sentencing at Ipswich Crown Court in February of 2023. The scammer went on the run and was able to avoid detection by hiring cars to move around. Parker reappeared on law enforcement's radar in the summer of 2023. When he decided to start looking for love, the police found that he'd created a Match.com profile, and thus the investigation was reignited. The farmer was eventually found by the authorities at a service station near Basingstoke, Hampshire, on August the 31st. He was arrested and taken back to Suffolk. In September of 2023, Parker was sentenced to serve 4 years for fraud, 10 months for the animal offenses, and an additional 2 months for absconding. Number 4. Casey Wise. On June the 10th of 2021, Ohio woman Casey Wise called the authorities in Palmer to report that her husky dog was unresponsive inside her car and that she was too panicked to check on it. An animal control officer and a body cam equipped police officer arrived at the scene to find that the dog had died in Wise's SUV. The former officer was enraged when it became apparent that the animal had been left in the hot car since early morning, and told the other officer, who seemingly shared her anger, "I want her arrested." 31-year-old Wise was taken into custody and in the winter of the following year pleaded guilty to 1 count of cruelty to companion animals. Wise was reported to have had a list of roughly 20 past animal-related violations that included failure to comply with requirements for a dangerous dog, failure to comply with animal registration, and failure to comply with rabies vaccination requirements. Number 3. Pamela Cisco. 57-year-old Ohio woman Pamela Cisco texted her sister in the spring of 2021 saying that there was an active shooter on the premises of her workplace at a Navistar plant in Springfield. The message claimed that a man who'd been fired the previous day had come into work with a gun and that Cisco was barricading inside an office with the lights off. The sister called 911 and informed the dispatcher about the situation, adding that she was scared to text Cisco back because she didn't want to accidentally reveal her location inside the building to the shooter. Within minutes, a massive police response arrived at the plant. The officers held the employees at gunpoint and asked them to come out. Less than 20 minutes elapsed between the initial call and the authorities understanding that there was no threat and that Cisco had actually played an April Fool's prank on her sister. Her actions were condemned by the police, with Major Chris Clark later telling a media outlet, "She put a lot of people in danger today over a stupid joke." The prank resulted in Cisco being arrested and charged with inducing panic and disrupting public services. Today's topic was requested by Candice Bedito 5495. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Roy Eugene Hancock. In June of 2018, Officer Eric McAllister from Morganfield, Kentucky, received calls and texts from a person looking to buy marijuana from someone named Dunk. It would later emerge that the latter, a drug dealer known to law enforcement, had posted his new number on Snapchat, but fumbled some of the digits, which resulted in him inadvertently posting McAllister's number. Local law enforcement and a state trooper decided to seize the opportunity and set up a sting. The undercover operation resulted in the arrest of 51-year-old Roy Eugene Hancock and that of an unnamed juvenile. The latter's charges weren't specified by law enforcement, but Hancock's charges included gun and drug counts. When envy goes wrong, a video that we published a while back, is coming up after number 1 still. Stay put if you're longing for more of our content and hadn't seen that one yet. Number 1. Adrien Anderson. 24-year-old Adrien Anderson entered a Walmart on Twin City Highway in Port Arthur, Texas, in August of 2019. He went to the store's refrigerated section and opened a tub of Blue Bell ice cream. Anderson was recorded in a video which subsequently went viral as he licked the ice cream before putting the container back. Anderson wasn't the first person to perform what would become known on social media as the Ice Cream Challenge, but he was one of its earliest replicators to go viral. The originator was a teenage girl from East Texas who was tracked down by law enforcement and dealt with by the Juvenile Justice Department. In the prank's aftermath, Anderson was arrested and charged with criminal mischief. He told law enforcement that he'd bought the ice cream right after the clip had cut off and didn't leave it on the shelf for the public to purchase. That aspect was confirmed by his receipt and by the store's surveillance systems. The damage, however, had already been done, as the store was forced to remove a lot of ice cream from the section due to health concerns. In March of 2020, Anderson was sentenced to 30 days in jail and 180 days of probation. He was also required to pay a fine of $1,000 and $1,565 restitution to Blue Bell. His father told the media that he'd carried out the stunt for Facebook likes. Number 7. Zoe and Joan Lee. In January of 2018, Englishwoman Lisa Hall, aged 44, accompanied her daughter Holly during a night out in Bognor Regis, West Sussex. At about 11:30 p.m, the mother of 3 reportedly decided that she was too tired to continue the evening's activities and called her husband to come pick her and 23-year-old Holly up. While the Halls were awaiting their ride home, a young woman later named Zoe Lee approached the pair and aggressively insulted Lisa in a seemingly random verbal assault. Lee then proceeded to unleash a brutal physical attack on the woman, in the perpetration of which she was aided by her own mother, Joan. It was later reported that Lisa blacked out after she'd been punched to the ground, kicked and stomped on by the hostile mother and daughter. When she came to, Holly was standing over her with tears in her eyes. Her husband, who by then had arrived at the scene, insisted that she go to the hospital. The vicious attack left Lisa with a shattered ankle that required intensive surgery to repair. Investigators ultimately concluded that Zoe and Joan Lee had targeted the victim because they were envious of her physical appearance. They were both charged with causing grievous bodily harm and consequently imprisoned for 5 years each. Number 6. Charles Jessup. After ending her relationship with Charles Jessup in 2019, Claire Nash began receiving an incessant stream of texts and phone calls from the man, who went as far as to claim he was going to take his own life if they didn't get back together. Jessup sent the 33-year-old woman 95 messages on Christmas Day 2019 and an additional 174 over the next several days. It was reported that Nash had contacted the police about her ex-boyfriend's harassment on 3 separate occasions within a 6-week period, but she chose not to make an official complaint against him. On the morning of January the 16th of 2020, a local law enforcement officer reportedly determined that Nash was at medium risk of being the victim of a domestic violence incident. That same day, Jessup went to the woman's home in Suffolk, England, where with a kitchen knife in hand, he waited for her to arrive. Later that evening, Nash's new boyfriend was alarmed by the sound of screaming on their front doorstep, allegedly hearing Jessup say, "I said I was going to do this to you." He then dialed 999 as an altercation between Jessup and Nash had spilled into the house. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but they were ultimately unable to stop Nash from succumbing to the multiple stab wounds she'd sustained. Jessup reportedly told officers, "I have won," several times as they were arresting him, with the attack believed to have been related to him growing envious that Nash had moved on since their breakup. Following his criminal trial, he was sentenced to a minimum prison term of 30 years. Number 5. Cordelia Farrell. On October the 14th of 2019, Wayne Coventry was found dead at his brother's house in Broomsgrove, Worcestershire, England. The 36-year-old had reportedly gotten into a heated argument with his girlfriend, Cordelia Farrell, which had escalated into a physical altercation. The row culminated with the latter fatally stabbing Coventry with a kitchen knife. Speaking to the authorities after the deadly incident, Coventry's mother described her son's relationship with Farrell as toxic, also claiming that it was characterized by violence and jealousy. The mistrustful and envious attitude with which Farrell allegedly approached her relationship with Coventry had previously given rise to other violent outbursts. One such instance had occurred only weeks prior to Coventry's death, when Farrell bit the man in his groin region during an argument. Subsequent reports detailed how, on the night of Coventry's killing, Farrell plunged the knife directly into his chest and pierced his aorta, which caused him to bleed out within minutes. Following the attack, 38-year-old Farrell fled the scene, and she remained on the run until turning herself into the authorities 5 days later. Although she would be ultimately cleared of the charge of murder, Farrell was convicted of manslaughter after being tried at Worcester Crown Court, and she was consequently sentenced to 10 years in prison. Number 4. Dominic Baragan. Englishman Dominic Baragan's relationship with his girlfriend began to erode in the summer of 2017 as, according to court documents, he had begun to exhibit bizarre behavior that severely unnerved his partner. On one occasion, Baragan had allegedly made her stand up so he could cover her body in plastic wrap. In spite of the woman's repeated protests, the 25-year-old, who described himself as a devout Christian, was reported to have simply laughed at her discomfort and thrown her onto the bed. After she continued to express her discomfort with the situation, Baragan begrudgingly gave up on his advances. At a later time, when she conveyed the fact that she was still upset from the incident, the two reportedly got into an extremely animated argument that culminated with Baragan strangling the woman while lying on top of her. The altercation left her with bruises and scratches on her neck, after which she broke up with Baragan and began temporarily living with her mother. While she was away from her home, in July of 2017, Baragan reportedly broke into her residence and found an open box of condoms on her bedside table. Jealous and enraged, he then ransacked his ex-girlfriend's house before setting it on fire. The following day, Baragan turned himself into the police and he was charged with assault and arson. He was consequently sentenced to 3 years in prison, and he was also issued a restraining order that barred him from making any form of contact with his ex-girlfriend. Number 3. Mary Conye. Naomi Oni, A Victoria's Secret shop assistant from London, England, was attacked by a woman wearing an Islamic niqab after leaving work on the night of December the 30th of 2012. As was captured on CCTV footage, the female assailant had followed the 22-year-old out of the Westfield shopping centre in Stratford and proceeded to tail her all the way home. When Oni approached her residence, the woman emerged from the shadows and threw acid all over the victim's body, inflicting horrific burns to her face, leg, chest, stomach, and arms. Oni's extensive injuries, one of which included being left nearly blind in one eye, ultimately required 2 facial reconstruction surgeries to mend. Following an investigation into the matter, local authorities identified 22-year-old Mary Connier as the perpetrator of the acid attack. The young woman had been close friends with Oni since childhood, but they'd reportedly had a falling out a short time prior to the incident. Court documents detailed how Connier had grown envious of her friend's complexion and appearance. She also alleged that the victim had called her ugly during a previous interaction, and she'd thus premeditated the attack as a cruel form of retaliation. The revelation of Connier's involvement in her friend's disfigurement proved surprising to many, including Oni herself, who'd unknowingly gone to her attacker to commiserate with her in the incident's wake. Connier was ultimately jailed for 12 years, following a criminal trial at Sneersbrook Crown Court in London. Number 2. Ryan Abbott. Chelsea Morris of Cheshire, England, was in a tumultuous relationship with Ryan Abbott for 3.5 years. Throughout that period in time, which Morris herself described as rocky, 28-year-old Abbott would allegedly get angry and jealous whenever his girlfriend, who was 7 years his junior, went places where there might be other men present. As a consequence of Abbott's extremely controlling behavior, the young woman had lost touch with many of her friends during the course of their relationship. In March of 2019, Morris got a job at a local store which reportedly bothered her boyfriend, as she would be required to interact with a large number of people. The young woman decided to move back in with her parents to get away from her abusive partner. However, during a celebratory dinner with loved ones, Morris was confronted by Abbott, and she misguidedly agreed to accompany him back to his apartment. It was there that Abbott allegedly flew into a drug-fueled rage and began berating Morris about interacting with other men. He briefly withdrew to his kitchen before emerging with a machete that he then used to stab Morris in the back and slice her right ring finger. Abbott subsequently fled the scene and continued his violent outburst in the surrounding neighborhood, jumping on cars, emptying trash bins, and smashing the glass windows of adjacent houses. For his various offenses, Abbott was later jailed for 4 years and was also given a 5-year restraining order, barring him from contacting his ex-girlfriend upon his release. While Morris survived the attack, she was reportedly left so emotionally affected by the incident that she refused to leave her house for a long time afterwards. It was also reported that she faced the risk of not being able to properly use her injured finger again. Number 1. Brandon Clark. An Instagram influencer from Utica, New York, was brutally murdered by her romantic partner on July the 14th of 2019. As was detailed in a police report created in connection to the incident, the victim, Bianca Devins, had gone to a concert in New York City with her boyfriend, Brandon Clark. Accompanying them was another male friend of the influencers, who was only identified by his first name as Alex. Following the musical performance, Devins and Clark returned to Utica, where they reportedly got into a contentious argument. The latter confronted Devins and, in a jealous rage, alleged that he'd seen her kissing Alex at the concert. The situation soon escalated, and the 22-year-old man assaulted Devins before he pulled a large knife out from under his car seat and slit her throat. Following the attack, Clark called several of his family members, who contacted 911 in fear of what the man might do to himself or others. Clark then posted pictures of Devins' dead body to social media. Although Instagram ultimately removed the photos from their platform, they faced criticism for waiting nearly a day after they'd been uploaded to take them down. He was taken into custody and charged with second-degree murder. In February of 2020, Clark entered a guilty plea, and in March the following year, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Thanks for watching. For a year, would you rather base all your decisions on your horoscope, or have your parents handle all your decision making? Let us know in the comments section below.